Today I'm going to show you how to crochet these cute plaid or checkered hot pads. These are made in a traditional way, and I do have a free tutorial for a basic hot pad that's plain in this same fashion, but I love how adding just the color changes creates this cute plaid pattern. It makes the hot pad feel nice and cozy. For my hot pads, I do use a worsted weight yarn. This creates a nice thick fabric to keep the heat from transferring to your hands while you're using them. And I also use a crochet hook K. This is a 6.5 millimeter hook. I like to use these because it creates a nicer, I guess, more flexible fabric so that it's easy to wrap around a pan. If you crochet tight, I would definitely use a K hook. If you crochet extremely loose, you may want to go down a crochet hook because you do want to have your stitches tight enough that the heat does not transfer through your hot pad. If you want a tutorial on how to make a hot pad like this that is not checkered, check the links below. I do have one of those. It is also free on my blog, and I have a YouTube video on that as well. But to begin this, we are going to actually start. These are constructed by working diagonally. You actually start working at beginning chain, and then you work around the chain with no increases but in continuous rounds. And so you'll just kind of work the continuous rounds, and it eventually just folds itself up and around, and then you seam it going the opposite diagonal when you are completed. So let's get started. Okay, to get started, I'm going to be using a brown and a cream color of yarn. So to start, you're going to start with a beginning chain, and these can vary. I like to start with 27 chains, but you can change that. It just needs to be in increments of 8 plus 5. So 8 times 4 is 32, plus my 5 is 37 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, and 37. Now this is going to be the diagonal of your hot pad. So don't think this is going to be the width, otherwise you might think it's going to be too long. After I've completed my 37 chains, I'm going to start my checkered pattern. The checkered pattern, so each checker box is 4 stitches wide by 4 rows high. So I'm going to first start off by crocheting a single crochet in the second chain from my hook. So I'm going to skip this first chain and single crochet in the second chain, and then the next 2 to complete 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and now I need to do 1 more single crochet in this brown color, but I'm going to change to the white or the cream color of yarn on the last pull through of this stitch. Okay, so I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, and then I'm going to drop this old color to the back. I'm going to grab the cream color, add it on my hook, and complete that stitch. So if you look closely here, I've got 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, but this one ends with the cream color on my hook. And then I'm going to go right into the next stitches, crocheting over the brown yarn to complete the next color change. So we're going to work 3 regular single crochets, 1, 2, 3, And on this last color change, the last single crochet, we're going to change colors to back to our brown yarn. Okay, so to change the colors, we're going to insert our hook, pull up the cream yarn. Now we're going to drop the cream yarn, pull up our brown yarn, and complete that single crochet. Now we're going to single crochet in the next 4 chains, and on that 4th single crochet, we're going to change it back to the cream color. So insert your hook, and while you're doing this, crochet over the other color of yarn. So there's 1, 2, 3, and on our 4th one, we're going to change color. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, drop the old color, pull up the new color, yarn over and pull through 2 to complete your single crochet. And I have 4 brown single crochets. Okay, I'm going to do it a couple more times for you. So 4 in the cream color, and on the 4th one, we're going to change colors back to the brown. So there's 2, 3. Now I'm starting my 4th single crochet, insert your hook, pull up a loop, drop the cream color, pull up the brown color, yarn over and pull through both loops on hook. Now crochet over the white yarn or the cream yarn, insert your hook, there's 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3 single crochets, and then on the 4th one, insert your hook, pull up a loop, drop the brown yarn, pull up the cream yarn, and complete that single crochet. So as you can see, you're starting to see that pattern already with the brown, cream, and brown. So continue this to the end of the row, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to continue working on the other side of the chain. Okay, so I'm at the end of my row. I've completed 2 browns. So here's my 3rd brown single crochet, and on my 4th one, even though it's the last chain, I'm still going to change colors to the cream yarn. So insert my hook, pull up a loop, drop that brown color, pull up the cream yarn, and pull up a loop to complete that stitch. So just as a double check, you should have color changes every 4 stitches as you work through from the beginning to the end. You'll also notice that the color that you began with, the brown, is also the same color that you ended with, and that is correct. That's that extra added 5 chains at the end at our beginning chain that we had talked about. That's the 4 extras at the end plus your turning chain 1. Okay, so we're only halfway done with our first round. We are going to continue to work in the other side of the beginning chain that we worked. So we have our white or our cream yarn on our hook. We're actually just going to rotate this over, and now we're going to work into the other loop of those beginning chains. So don't chain 1, don't work any extras. This is just my beginning yarn right here from my beginning chain. I'm just going to kind of crochet over that for a few stitches, plus the brown yarn that you're working with. Okay, so pull up a loop, single crochet, there's 1, 2, 3, and then that last one, insert your hook, pull up a loop, drop the cream yarn, pull up your brown working yarn, and complete the stitch for a color change. Now you're going to continue this pattern along the way. You'll notice that along the brown stitches, you're going to be crocheting cream stitches, and then above the cream stitches, you will be crocheting the brown stitches all along the row. So insert your hook, bury that cream in that beginning brown yarn. There's 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets, 3 single crochets, and 4. So pull up, drop that brown yarn to the back, and pull up the cream yarn to complete that stitch. So just a quick look here, you kind of see how those colors are changing as we go. And there's actually a little curve at the end here, which is correct as well. So let's just continue this all along to the end, and then I will pick right back up at the end as well. Okay, so I'm just finishing up the first round, and I've got my 3 cream colors, 1, 2, 3 cream single crochets. I have one more. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, drop the cream color of yarn, and then change it to the brown. And you have just completed your first round of the checkered plaid hot pad. And again, you can see that it's an opposite on each row with the cream and the brown all the way along. This is the hardest row of the entire hot pad, so if you completed this, it's going to be easier from now on. At this point, you can also turn this over and you can go ahead and clip or bury. If you didn't crochet over your beginning strands of yarn, I would just weave them in through some stitches and then cut those off just so you have a clean piece of fabric to be working off of from now on. Okay, so I've clipped all my beginning pieces of yarn, so I have nice clean edges to work with, no extra yarn hanging off or anything like that. So hopefully you've untangled all of your yarn that's been twisting up as you do all your color changes. I'm actually going to give you a tip here after I show you how to begin row 2 on how to keep your yarn from twisting that will keep you from that kind of headache as you're working. Okay, so I have completed the 4 cream colored single crochets from row 1. It is now time to begin row 2. So you're not going to chain 1, you're not going to join. You're just going to continue by working into the top of that first single crochet of round 1. So just kind of rotate your work. You're going to continue to crochet over the working cream color yarn and work your brown yarn. So here's the first stitch of that row. Insert your hook and complete that single crochet, and then complete your next 3 single crochets as well. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then on the 4th one we're going to complete that color change. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, drop that brown yarn and pick up the cream yarn. Crochet over the cream or brown yarn as you work the next 4 stitches. So 4 cream single crochets. There's 1, 2, 3, and on the 4th one, drop the cream color, pick up the brown to complete the color change, and then work 4 brown. 1, 2, 3, 4, drop the brown color and pick up the cream color to complete your 4 cream at this point. Okay, so you're probably understanding the pattern at this point, that you just change your colors every 4 stitches. And it just kind of, you build on top of this and it creates. There is a lot of color changes throughout this pattern, and you may notice that your working yarns are starting to tangle. This is a tip that I like to do. It's not mandatory for the pattern, but I find it helpful. So I've got my 2 skeins of yarn. I'm just going to kind of pull them in here so you can see them. So I've got my brown and my cream. My brown is kind of in the back, my cream is in the front. So this is how I keep my yarn straight when I am doing color changes. Okay, so I'm going to complete my next 4 single crochets in the cream. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. When I drop the cream color of yarn, since my cream color yarn is towards the front, I'm going to just kind of pull this yarn to the front. Grab the brown yarn and complete that single crochet. That yarn's still in the front, and then I just lay it across and I crochet over it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the brown yarn is in the back, so I'm going to take my brown yarn and pull it to the back, pull up my cream yarn, and complete that stitch. And then obviously crochet back over that brown yarn as I go. So let me go over that one more time. So I've got 1, 2, 3. On my fourth one, my cream yarn I'm going to drop. My cream skein of yarn is in the front, so I'm going to pull that to the front and then grab the brown. Complete that stitch and then crochet over the cream. 1, 2, 3, 4. The brown yarn I'm going to drop. The brown skein of yarn is towards the back, so I'm going to drop this to the back of my work, pull up the cream, complete the stitch, and then as I crochet the cream color, I'm going to pull this brown back over to crochet over it. 1, 2, 3, and again on the fourth, I just pull that forward and then pull up the brown. So by doing this, switching the yarn, changing it to the back and then to the front, it just keeps my yarn from tangling as I work. So at any time when I put my yarn down or pick it up, my yarn ends are not tangled. So it just kind of keeps them nice and clean. So as far as row 2 goes, you're going to just continue to work these same color changes around. They will just build on top of one another. And I will come back to you when I hit the end of row 2. Okay, so row 2 is completed, and as you can see, the checkered pattern is really starting to show. You've worked 2 rows in each color on each side, and so the next 2 rows are going to be worked exactly like row 2. So you're just going to continue to work the 4 brown, 4 cream, 4 brown, and that will complete your first. Let's pull this in. Whoops! It'll actually complete your first section here and here. So I'm going to come back after row 4 is completed, and you will have this part of your hot pad completed. Okay, so I have completed 4 rows, and as you can see, those nice evenly spaced checkers, the checkerboard is coming into play really nicely right there. So I've completed 4 rows. I've ended with my white section here, changing to my brown section. Now, the construction of this hot pad is a little unique because you've noticed it's starting to fold on the ends. And what's gonna happen is, as you can see, it folds, and these folds are just gonna come further and further in on both sides until you can seam them together. So this is the end of my row, and I don't want to have a seam running straight down the middle of my hot pad. Instead, I want the seam to run along the side of the hot pad. So I'd rather have the seam run along here than straight down the center of my hot pad. And what I mean by seam is I'm actually referring to the color change in this specific hot pad pattern. Since it's a pattern stitch with colors, there is going to be a slight seam that will run down the side. So to do that, we're going to add, to make it easy, you're just going to add an extra 4 stitches at the end of each section. So we're going to go ahead and add 4 more brown stitches here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to change it. Actually, no, we're going to do 4 in brown. Sorry, I'm going to be confusing there. You're going to do 4 in brown to complete this section. So this very first stitch is actually going to be, or the very first checker is actually going to be 5 rows wide instead of the 4. It's only going to be this one, but that is actually going to be a rule of thumb throughout the rest of the pattern. So again, this has 5 rows of brown. Now to continue the stitch pattern, now again, we're on row 5, so we started with the 4 in brown, and we're going to continue with 4 more brown right here before we change to the yellow, or sorry, to the cream. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, drop our brown, pull up our cream color, and now work our 4 cream colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, drop our cream, and pull up our brown. So as you can see, we're going to start changing our colors here, which will create the next checkered section of the hot pad. Now as this folds, you can see this is going to be the seam right here. So the seam that we're going to have is, there's not going to be a clean shot of cream color or brown color. There will be a slight seam there, but again, it's going to run almost, it won't be exactly on top of this fold. It's actually going to be just slightly to one side or the other, but it will, it'll basically be camouflaged because of that seam. So for row 5, you're going to start with 8 brown and then move on to your 4 in each color and work around. So I'll come back at the end of row 5 to make sure that we're on track. Okay, so I've completed row 5, and as you can see, the checkerboards are alternating now. So we're going to just kind of continue to build on top of this. One thing I did want to mention is that, so at the end of your row, so this was the beginning of my row last time, was right here at this color change. This was, so the brown was the first stitch of the rows. And then we carried it over an extra 4 stitches. That is going to be the new, quote, beginning of your row. So I'm going to go ahead and work my 4 in my cream color right now. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where I would actually drop and change to brown. This is the actual start of my new sections right here. So if you want to, you can mark it with a stitch marker. Maybe just mark the stitch down in here just to kind of place that this is my new section. So when you are working, now you're going to have your 4 rows of cream, and then on this section right here, again, it's going to be like this one, it's going to have 5 rows of brown on it. So you're going to have 5 rows of brown, but then this one over here will just be the 4 rows of cream, because then you'll carry it over into the next row, just like we did on this row. So I hope that isn't too confusing. I will go ahead and place a stitch marker right here, and then continue to work your next 3 rows. So you have 4 rows of your checker pattern, and then we'll pick up and I'll explain this, this transition again. This is the only confusing part of this pattern. But again, all it's doing is it's creating, when that fold is created on the hot pad, it's creating that seam to go along here and not down the center of the actual hot pad. Okay, so we just finished that next section. So now I have the first checkered, which is the 4 stitches, and then the second checkered, which is the 4 stitches. Now in the last section, I told you I was going to mark that first stitch right here, and then I'd carried that up through 4 sections. This was the first stitch of the row, and then I was saying how then you're going to crochet 8 in the same brown, which will make this 4, or it'll make this section 5 rows high, but then it will also begin the color changes for the next section. So we're going to do that next. We're going to just kind of pick up right here where we left off. So I did my 4 cream stitches, and then I changed the color to the brown yarn. So again, at the marked stitch, which is the beginning of that row, we're going to work 8 brown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and on the 8th one, you're going to change back to your cream color. and then start with changing color every 4 stitches again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, change your yarn color. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and change your yarn color again. And then we'll stop and see where we're at. Okay, so then you can see you're starting your next checker box on top as a new color. So here was our beginning stitch down here. Now we're going to move the stitch marker up to our beginning stitch over here to mark that section again. And when you hit that, so there's your first stitch of the new row or the new section. So you're going to work up 4 more rows, and then when you hit this spot next time, again, you're going to work 4 or 8 browns to carry you over. Okay, so you're just about halfway done here. So you're going to continue this. So we have 1 section, 2 section. You're going to get a section 3, section 4, and then you're going to do another color change and work 2 rows. At that point, you will be done with the entire hot pad, and as you can see, it just folds over. And again, these seams along here are just going to get closer and closer together, and at that point, that is when you'll be ready to seam it together like the sample over here. So we'll pick back up when you have completed 4.5 checkered sections. Okay, so I have my hot pad all crocheted. If you look at the front, or where the beginning side, you can see that I started here. I worked my 4 rows with my 4 stitch repeat in colors to create the checkered or the plaid look in the hot pad. I've completed 4.5 sections. So here's my center line. Here's 1, 2, 3, and then I've got 4. So I've got 4 and then a half. So then just 2 rows of the other color there. And that is when I know that it is time to stop and sew my center seam together. As you can see, it's just kind of naturally folded into the correct shape. And my colors should line up. You may have to kind of push out or pull the corners out just a little bit to get those to line up. So the 2 rows at the top will be, when I flip that over, those will be sewn together. So you can see I've got 2 rows of the cream color here, 2 rows of the cream color here. So when they're sewn together, it will be a 4-row block to complete the pattern along the whole hot pad. Now, when you're completing the hot pad, you may be like, a row early, you might be like, oh, they kind of align. Should I stop early? Go ahead and complete that 2nd row. As you sew it together and pull this out, these will actually like fold together and close up that gap just a little bit, and it still creates a really nice square hot pad. So another thing to note is your seam in this hot pad, it's for the most part hidden. You can't really see where that seam is, where you worked the extra row. It's actually right along the top here. And you can see it when you flatten it out, how this row worked. You have actually 5, and it works across to begin the next row. So this, since we added those extra stitches to alternate or to pull the beginning of the row over a little bit, that actually becomes your folded section, and it's just kind of hidden. It's just not that noticeable because it's kind of on that rounded part. It's not going to be perfect, but for the most part it's hidden. Here's one that's already been sewn together that I made in 2 shades of green, and again, you just can't really notice the seam. On this one, it's actually, well, let's see here. Oh, it's right here. It's actually in the light colored along here, and it's actually off just to the side a little bit, but overall you just don't notice it when you're just looking at the hot pad. Okay, one more notation before we actually seam this together. So as I had mentioned, you worked your 4 and then you completed 4 more to carry your checker into the next section here. So again, this is my seam. When I worked my rows around, they all come out perfectly until the very, very end. I actually would have ended doing the 2-row repeat. If you guys can see this, this is the 2-row repeat. And I've got 2 rows of brown, 2 rows of cream. And this is the one where I would have, this is my beginning, and I actually ended up having to work an extra one because of this carried over. So this section right here actually has 1, 2, 3, and then I had to work, I just worked 2 more over to carry me to the center of where this fold is gonna be right here. So this is kind of the one odd area of the hot pad. Again, that will be totally hidden once we seam it together. Okay, so to seam it together, I've got it folded together so that the stitches line up. So again, I have 2 rows of cream and then 2 rows of cream on this side, and those will be sewn together. I have the 2 rows of brown and 2 rows of brown that will be sewn together. And at the tip, you have the square that is 4 stitches long. So you're gonna fold those together. And when I worked those, I worked a single crochet in the first one. Oh, that's not focusing. Single crochet in the first one and then a slip stitch. That's right here. And then I just fold those over, and I'm going to start with the whip stitch, and I'm going to whip stitch all the way down the seam to the end, making sure that my stitches, the colors in my stitches align to create those checkered boxes. So to crochet the whip stitch, the first few are going to be the most difficult. Basically, you're going to come in, always going from the inside of the hot pad and pulling your needle out from the outside. So you're going to put your needle in, and you're going to be in that. So if you're counting across, you're going to be in that 3rd stitch. You're going to pull it through, and then I come back and I go back through that 2nd stitch that I slip stitched into. Don't pull it too tight, and then I'm going to go to the next stitch on the top. Again, working from the inside of the hot pad to the out, and then going from the inside out, I'm going to go into the top of the next stitch. So I've only sewn those 2 stitches together. Now my brown stitches should be aligned. So I've got 4 brown here and 4 brown here. And again, going from the inside out, whoops, pull that through. And then going from the inside of the hot pad to the out. Going from the inside out, try to grab only the top of that stitch, inside out, inside out, inside out, and we'll do 2 more to finish this brown section. Okay, so once I get through, and I usually do about 4 stitches. This one, when I start, I do the 8. I just kind of pinch this section with my thumb, and then I take the beginning chain and I just kind of pull it, and it literally just pulls tight, pulls all these stitches down, nice and, oh, there we go, nice and tight, and you can't even see that white thread in that brown section right there. So now we're going to continue to whip stitch all the way along to the very, very end of our hot pad. So again, you're just going to kind of work from the inside out, inside to out. And again, I work about 4 stitches. So 1 colored section, and that's an approximate. You can do a few more stitches or a couple less, but I like to kind of stop every few just to make sure that I do get that nice tight seam. I'll do one more and show you again how I pull that tight. Okay, so I've completed this cream section. I did accidentally grab just a little bit of that brown fiber of that yarn there, and that's okay. That'll just kind of get hidden. Again, it's very loose right here. You can kind of see. I'm just going to kind of pinch that right there with my thumb, just lightly. It just kind of holds it in place. And then I take my other hand and I pull this yarn. And you can just kind of feel it cinch down. And then it's nice and tight. And then I can move on. And I'll come back at the very end. Okay, so I have the whole seam sewn here, except for the last, I guess it'd be 4 stitches per side. So I just kind of wanted to come in and show you how I work those. Just continue again. You go from the inside out, inside out. Okay, so the last 4 is going to be these 4 very, very end corner pieces, or corner stitches. Sorry, they're not pieces. Just kind of grab those. Again, you're not pulling this tight yet, so you can easily get in there. Going through the very, very last one. Okay, so I have those all done. Again, I just kind of hold my finger there and pull as tight as I can. I have a nice seam there. Now this kind of creates a point here, and I have white yarn, and I don't want my white yarn to be seen. So I'm actually just going to kind of take my needle here, and I'm just going to kind of thread it through the stitches down to the cream yarn. Let's see here. So if you can see this, I entered it up here at the top of the stitch where I finished, and then I just brought it down through 1 stitch here at the end. Okay, so I just pulled that through there, and then I'm going to actually tie a knot to secure it in place. I like to just kind of come in and grab the bottom of the stitch here and tie a knot. And I do tie a knot on hot pads because they go through the laundry. They go through the laundry multiple times, and it just kind of ensures that that's not going to come undone at any time. So there's my knot, and then I'm just going to come back and weave that needle back through. So I came in behind it, wove it through just those 4 stitches right there, pull it through, and then I'm going to go right back through those same stitches to secure it. And then I can just cut that yarn there. Okay, so now my seam is nice and flat, and all of my checkerboards are lined up along here as well. And then if I turn this over, again, it's all still nice and checkerboard, and it's just kind of a fun spin on a traditional hot pad, and you still have the double fabric from like the way it's crocheted, and it just kind of folds on top of one another. So I hope you loved this tutorial and found it fun and inspiring, and that you give this a try.